Hello again, folks. Here, I feel compelled to weigh into this swamp, this this idea of this memo that was released to the knowledge of many people about this FISA report. Now, I don't claim to know a whole lot about it, and I don't really care a whole lot about it, except that it is evidence of what I've been talking about for a while here, on and again and off again with people, which is that it's wonderful to have a great outlook on life and to hang out. And of course, the goal is to hang out with the best people we can find, positive people, constructive people, people who want to make a better life for themselves and allow that to spread to others. But we can't delude ourselves that we have come out of an evolutionary path, which was very much, I'm going to get mine, I don't going to give a care about you. And there's a lot of humanity who still operates on that. I talked recently about a lady who recently told a story about how her family was defrauded to the tune of something like $10,000 over some sort of a telephone scam. Now, how can that person actually live with themselves? I don't know. I suspect that they are living in a similar way that an ant lives. That it would chew up the body of another ant if it's hungry. I mean, it's doing what it's got to do. And this is living in a very low level of, it's not a human trait to live. A human trait is to live by sort of almost by moral precepts, right? To make decisions based on that. And but a lot of people operate like this. And you see this whenever there's a spectrum of life, politics, social society, whatever it is, there's always going to be this element of what the old religious would just plainly call evil, right? So I'm going to ask the question, who else is surprised by the revelations of the FISA courts? I hate to tell you this, I just hate to say this, but I'm not surprised because whenever there's great power, there's opportunity for great corruption. The reason I say I'm not surprised is because way back in 2015, when Trump first announced his candidacy, I was of the mind at the time, I realized that Trump was a functional genius, perhaps be off the charts compared to what most people, maybe not a technical genius, but a practical genius who is very, very experienced in negotiating deals and getting what he wanted in life. He's demonstrated that over and over again. Sure, failures accepted, but who doesn't have failures in their life, right? And I remember saying to certain people who thought I was a complete moron, basically, for saying it, I said, don't count this guy out. I mean, if you're going to count this out, you don't know anything about him. That was I didn't really bother saying that to people, but that was my sensation, because I had read Art of the Deal years ago, and I also realized that he came out of the Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale's teachings, and this was a guy who was in it for the real thing, because he meant what he meant, and that to not understand that was to not understand Donald Trump also, that he did care about his country and so on. And I predicted that they would do everything, including shooting him, if they could. And when I meant they, I meant the entrenched system. And what's coming out here is, it's shocking to a lot of people, but it's not surprising. I'll tell you a little story about something that happened to me, and then something happened to another guy that I know about. It was this guy, Dean Clifford. Some of you know I've made comments about him before. This guy, he was a threat to the status quo, to the corrupt justice system, which is, I put it in quotation marks, justice. And he used to make comments about how the judges and so on are a bunch of pedophiles, and people thought he was kind of crazy and so on. And it turns out this was this pervert ring in Manitoba. I mean, the guy was in Manitoba, this pervert ring of judges who were eventually exposed. I mean, it takes a hell of a lot to expose a non-resident judge. It's very difficult. They're sort of the protected class, right? They're the royalty, basically, of the day. And but it came out, and he had something. Maybe there was something he had correct. But anyways, they harassed the hell out of him, and he spent years in jail. Several of those, a bunch of that time for no charge whatsoever, and a lot of it in solitary confinement, next door apparently to the guy who had dismembered that person on a Greyhound bus in Manitoba. They actually, as far as I remember correctly, they stuck him in beside that psycho. No charge, or no conviction, and just supposed to be held in remand. So they put him in a solitary confinement. Just amazing. And they changed all kinds of rules and so on. They wouldn't let his family visit him when he was in jail. And this guy wasn't even, convicted of anything at this point. This was basically, compared to a guy like Trump, a nobody, right? Had a couple of YouTube videos, went around, did speeches about freedom and so on. I also had an experience with this so-called justice system. Corrupt and rotten to the core. And actually I had a brother for a while, he's passed away now, who was a lawyer. And I can say this now, it won't affect him. He hated judges. He couldn't stand them. And I suspect that's one of the reasons why he died. I won't really get into that so much, but I remember once one of his family members told, actually my sister was asking him one time, once you get senior enough, you could become a judge, couldn't you? And my brother looked at her and said, no, not a chance. I'm not corrupt and I'm not political. See, what a judge is a corrupt political lawyer. That's what they are, 100%. That was his impression, and I got another lawyer friend. He said almost exactly the same words before I even told him that story. Anyway, my story was that I got hauled into court one time by some municipality for some cooked up bullshit, basically. And the judge, so-called judge, didn't seem to care that what I said didn't matter at all. And they threw this, it's very, they threw this chapbook down in front of me, some nonsense. I think it was called the, I forget what it was. It was some opinion that some judge had come up with in Alberta once about something to do with the free man on the land or some nonsense. And somehow just that dropping this thing, 80 pages of Latin in front of me, meant that I was something. It was beyond belief. So it's not surprised that these people just use the system. They're using the system, going through the motions, and he referred to me as a defendant. My point was, what am I defending? You guys, this guy's over here is making a claim. Isn't he supposed to defend his claim? But no, apparently not. Apparently not. It's more and more these so-called justice systems. They're not justice systems because everybody's playing on the same team against you. You think about what happened in this FISA situation. It was all these, the FBI and the Justice Department and the DNC and all these different organizations, supposedly independent. They're all colluding together. And, one of them cooks up a bunch of fake information, this dossier about Trump, all nonsense. They leak it over to the FBI or some sort of a channel like that. And the FBI just tells this apparently FISA court, which is apparently unconstitutional. It's not public or whatever. They just tell them they got this information and nobody asks. But why bother, right? You're all on the same team. You know what you're doing. You're going after this guy. It's just like Dean Clifford or myself. It's just some schmuck we got to pat down. So why the hell do we ever, we're of course we're going to win. Like, we're all powerful. So why would we bother following any rules that we make up? Why would we bother following? We'll just use those rules those so-called rules, make it look like this guy's the bad guy. So they tried this on Trump. And Trump, being the practical genius, once again, he's been able to duck and swerve. And I think he has potentially created a counter coup and probably exposed something far, far greater than Watergate ever was. But I'll tell you something right now. This is my prediction. Watergate was huge, and it probably should have been. But this, even though it's much, much more comprehensive than Watergate, much more serious than Watergate, because of the undermining of the whole system, not just one person, the undermining of the whole system, it won't be as big as Watergate because of who the mainstream is protecting, right? Because even, of course, the media was in on this. So it wasn't only the Justice Department and the FBI and the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democrat Party. It was also all the mainstream media was in on this. So therefore, it's never going to be, especially in the mainstream media, it's never going to be as big as Watergate, because Watergate was of somebody, Nixon, who was outside of that cabal, at least was the enemy of that cabal. And But none of this is really surprising to me, because it's the human nature. There's always going to be an element of humanity which is fundamentally corrupt. For some reason, it hasn't gotten to the point of realizing that actually decency is actually more beneficial than corruption. But it's the mode of business, and a lot of people, and there's a number of people who operate in that mode of corruption. It might be a minority, but it doesn't seem to be based necessarily on intelligence, though very often it is. But what can happen with very intelligent people who are very corrupt, they become adept criminals. And adept criminals will go where there's less likelihood of being reprimanded and slapped on the fingers for when you're doing wrong. So where do you want to be? You want to be, if you're an adept criminal, you want to be a judge, because then you're a non-citizen, you're not subject to your own rules. You want to be in the Justice Department, you want to be in the CIA, you want to be in the FBI, you want to be in Congress, you want to be in the media, left-wing media, of course, because they'll leave you alone because they're run by communists, and the whole system is basically communist enwrapped, because that is a nest of corruption. I don't like to say this to sound negative. I want to say all this to be real, to be aware of this, because we want to improve the quality of our lives. We might as well be aware of what's going on. Like that young lady who had her family taken advantage of, right? She wished for a better quality of life by coming here. They wished for probably a better quality of life for her for coming here. As a result, though, they were unaware. They might have been naive of these scams that are out there, and there's all kinds of them. But the more power that's potential for people, the more chance there's going to be for scams. So therefore, I'm not surprised that when all of a sudden somebody comes in who campaigns and actually wins on a promise of cleaning up the swamp, and the swamp is the media, academia, the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, the opposition Clinton campaign, the Democrat Party, all of that. Well, why the hell wouldn't they go to war with him? Especially, and the reason they went to war with him so harsh, was because they knew how effective he was at doing what he does. Very effective man, very incredibly strong, practical genius. They were shaking in their boots and shitting their pants when he got elected, because they went, something's going on here. They couldn't kill him, because I remember saying earlier on, maybe they could have killed him, but I remember saying early on that, mark my word, and this may come out eventually, Donald Trump will have the most powerful personal security between him and the special forces, or the Secret Service. They'll be the go-between, because he's not going to trust them either, because they're going to be infiltrated by the swamp as well when he enters there. And I think that's why he's survived so far, because he's got the best there is, and I suspect he's got the Marines on his side too. And the raids against the suspected raids against the was it not West Point, but the FBI and some of the FBI and CIA offices by the Marines, the visiting of there a while ago. I suspect it had something to do with what's going on now, because the Marines swear an oath to the Constitution, whereas these other Federalist organizations, I'm not sure if they do. They are communist in nature, whereas the the Marines and even the Army are Republican in nature. So the FBI is going to be allied. FBI and CIA can be allied to the Democrats because they are communist or Federalist in nature, whereas the military, because it predates all that, it goes back all the way to the founding of the Republic, they are Republican in nature. So it may come down to eventually the commander-in-chief having to use the military to rout out some of these rogue, very dangerous rogue elements from within, because of course they swear an oath, the Marines and the military do, to combat enemies, foreign and domestic. And the biggest domestic now is the internal. The energy is still flowing into the swamp. It's very difficult to pull the plug on the swamp when you still have stuff draining in. So they're going to have to pull the plug and stop those, and we have to set up the guards to do that and rout out these the things that are going on. And sometimes we have to do that in our lives, right? But so the lesson there for ourselves, right? Because that's rather abstract for many people. What's going on over there? And people say, Steve, what the hell are you talking about that for? Well, because it deals with us. Think about our thoughts and the swamp that can be in there at times. Think about the activities that we do that are ineffective, that are actually destructive to what we want to do. Think of that a whole story that's going on of this cancerous problem going on, you might say. Think about how much that goes on in our lives and our relationships and so on, and how much we can improve, right? When we become people of honesty, people of decency, and we'll find that within ourselves when we set out to do something that we think is better for ourselves, that we will be attacked from others who are going to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. This isn't good for our family or whatever. But we'll also feel it within ourselves. We'll feel anxieties. We'll feel inhibitions, and all these sort of things are mechanisms built in within ourselves. That's the enemy within, trying to stop us. And we have to sometimes fight against or ignore or block it off or learn how to work with it or whatever. And when we do, we can prosper. And the same thing going on in the States right now. And the reason it's so important is because this is not just there. This is everywhere going on in the world. It's human nature. Human nature is whenever something as beautiful is built, where there's lots of prosperity, there will be the adept criminals creep in and try to steal rather than work for it. And it's something we must be aware of within ourselves, within our lives, and within our attempts to be honest. Steve here again. Hope that was helpful. Great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.